I'm going to be a little unorthodox, not that you would have known any differently, but I've changed this presentation 5 or 6 times in the last 24 hours. So the first thing I would like to do is find out if everyone or close to everyone has a device in their hand or could get their device in their hand. And if you don't have a particular device in your hand that can take a photo, maybe work with a neighbor next to you. Is there anybody who might want to or might need to work with a neighbor, or do you all have a device that will take a photo? Anybody who might need to work with their neighbor, just ask your neighbor, and you and your neighbor can maybe share their phone or whatever we want to call it these days. But what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to actually time you on this. I'm giving you 30 seconds. I want you to look around the room and probably, for some of you, think about either distance. You can look at the distance, or you can look very closely in on something. I want you to take one photograph, and you're going to actually refer back to this photograph as we progress through our work together, looking at 18-month-olds taking photographs over 2 years. So between the ages of, well, some of them were less than 18, about 14 months, up to 3 years. Over a 2-year period, these children had digital cameras and took photos. So this is a story about their work, and a little bit like yesterday, we're going to follow a protocol at the end of just one story today. And this time I'm going to actually enact the protocol differently. You're going to do some work at your tables rather than having us all do the work all together with the protocol around our dialogue after I share the experience. But first, you have 30 seconds. Look around the room. Find what you're going to take a picture of and take a picture of it. Okay, find your seat. And here's the first thing I'm going to ask you to do. Look back at the photo. Now, instead of you having an experience with the object itself, like those of you who came up here, you had an experience with the object itself. Now you have a memory of the experience. So you're going to remember. That's different than remember. Remember. So you member it up, okay, with a story, with a narrative. So here's what I want you to do in this very first part of remembering. I want you to look in on the photo, and I want you to think about its color, the light or absence of light, its weight, any other characteristic you might deem important for you about that object or person or whatever you've taken a picture of. And I would like for you to just jot down maybe 2 or 3 words about that importance. 2 or 3 words, whether it's about its weight, its heaviness, its lightness, its color, lack of color, whatever it is. Okay, that's the beginning of our journey together with your own photography. Now let's take a look at what we did with children across 2 years. So I've got some reading to do. Please don't fall asleep after lunch. But I'm going to share with you some words. Often, as we make our work visible and valued out into the community, we hear adults say that they do not really get the concept of the 100 languages of children. The 100 languages of children. And these are educators and parents who want to learn more about the pedagogy and philosophical underpinnings of Reggio Emilia, Italy's pre-primary schools and the toddler centers. We're inspired by Foreman and Fife in Edwards Gandini and Foreman's book in 2012, as they explain, quote, a child's stamp followed by an arrow followed by another child's stamp could mean Amy likes Zoe. It is the nature of the relation among the symbols, the stamp, the arrow, the stamp, that converts the medium into a message, and it is the presence of an intended message that motivates children to negotiate meaning and to co-construct knowledge. For us, we frequently utilize a vernacular in our school at Helen Gordon Child Development Center, the PSU Lab School in Portland, Oregon. We utilize this vernacular that is inclusive of a broad definition of language. What is language, we asked ourselves. We talk about the language of paint, the language of color, the language of pen, the language of paper, the language of light, glass, mirrors, and on, the language of photography, the language of clips in time. As a result of our open minds to this concept of the hundred languages, we're playing with the language of languages. Veavecki in 2010 shares that beyond verbal, the term languages refers to, quote, the different ways used by human beings to express themselves. Our mind's eye swells as we enlarge our sense of how children develop an ongoing and reciprocal relational exchange with media, symbols, learning, and wonder. Enacting this 100-language concept opens the children and us as educators to active engagement with no possibility, this is a quote from Malaguzzi, with no possibility of boredom. Hands and minds would engage each other with great liberating merriment. The intersection of discovery plus digital camera plus resulting digital images begins as toddlers initiate a study into their own digital imagery. The digital image encounters weave multiple languages of expression facilitated by the teachers and guided by children's own inquiry. As a community of learners immersed in the power of digital images produced by digital camera devices, the teachers wonder how to facilitate this journey. As this wondering lingers, a fundamental question emerges and guides us throughout this 2-year study. What happens when children are given access to digital cameras in their school community? We invite you on a journey with us into the power of images. As a teacher, leader, and a pedagogical director at the time of this study, I was an emerging professor, and working in an infant-toddler program and preschool program of 200 university families. We launched a classroom research investigation with 14 12 to 24-month-old children. That was the first year of the study. Expressing an interest in the digital camera used by their classroom teachers. The children begin their journey investigating digital images of themselves captured by the teachers in their school community. As the children embark on their image investigation, the teachers wonder what predictions the children will make about these captured experiences as these images are changed over time. In other words, as the physical appearance of familiar captured moments are manipulated, what becomes of the children's experiences? With this wondering and this research inquiry in mind, invitations are offered to the children to alter the physical appearance of images using color, natural and artificial light. These invitations initiate an exploratory journey between the children and the digital images themselves. As the children's study of the image continues, the teacher provides other languages of expression to deepen children's understanding of digital camera uses. The children travel through their initial exploration of knowledge of the use of digital cameras, and this is very apparent to us. The first year of our study ends with the children gifting us a digital image of the school community as learning made visible on a wall panel and in daily journals. The second year of our study begins with digital camera readily available for children in their classroom. The teacher observes the change in the children's intentionality with these cameras. The children begin documenting their creative representations in the classroom, as well as share images of favorite spaces on the Portland State University campus out and about. This is before we talked about out and about, ever. The children are invited to extend their thinking with digital images by attending to drawing, adding color, and creating verbal narratives. These specific and additional languages are fostered in a way to cultivate and provoke deeper understanding through symbolic representation and representational expression. In order to understand a bit more of this research project, we wish to step back and share with you now how we embarked on the journey into offering access to digital cameras and opening a playful dialogue with the 100 languages of children. In our school, we've actively and purposefully practiced in ways that evoke a sense of democracy. We believe that learning is active and for messing about. We've explored working in what we have more readily termed the atelier way. Rather than working in an atelier, we work in an atelier way, a studio way. We work in the mindset of the studio. We've explored working in what we have more readily termed the atelier way, where progettazione, the Italian word, of projecting forward, foraging through, like with your backpack on, like we did today out in the forest, and reflecting back upon our path of learning, has offered us classroom life and life out in the abyss, a place that is out in the darkness and away from learning compasses that would traditionally fill classroom spaces. This abyss, this way, leaves us with innovative and novel approaches to playfully explore and examine bigger life questions that ask us to seek the meaning of life rather than seek the right answers. So Jean and I wrote in 2018, that was just this year, I hope we remember it long enough to tell about it, that seeking right answers is a reductionist and would ignore these incidences whereby everyday lived experiences are reduced to the minutiae and distorted. We rather seek a holistic and more impressionistic portraiture of life to enact more complexity and richness to satisfy an internal hunger for deep understanding and for the meaning of life. Rinaldi in 2006 reminds us that the search for life and for the self is born with the child, and this is why we talk about a child who is competent and strong, engaged in the search toward life, toward others, toward the relations being between the self and life itself. Jean and I also, and Rinaldi's ideas also lead us to wonder in this research about our search for meaning and our own abilities to keep the competent child image in front of us, leading the way through our research project. Now, what you can imagine is Rachel and I engaged this project with the 12 to 24-month-olds, and then again in their second year when they were 24 to 36 months, in that age range. We were doing this work a while ago, and we had a different story to tell. I talked about that on the bus this morning with a couple of people. So now that I've come to some new understandings in my own learning, Rachel and I sat down just 2 months ago and rewrote this story. So this is a part of the story that Frank told and that I told from yesterday. So this is Rachel's story with the group of children, and it's really their story. Imagine walking into an urban school located near the hustle and bustle of the city's life. Mass transit, a parking structure right next door, and a grassy open lot across the street. As you enter this place, you instantly find traces of children, parents, teachers, and thinking, work and life made visible. On the walls, there are photographs and words that engage the senses very easily. They tell the story of children's playful studies around what Christine Chalet wrote about in 2008 as big ideas for inspiration, such as transformation as a big idea, spaces and enclosures. Somebody talked about spaces yesterday, and I thought, you've got to read that book from Christine. Spaces and enclosures is a big idea. Light is a big idea. Sand, water, sound, big ideas. Engage the children in big ideas, and then the rest of life can happen. So this is a very interesting idea Christine has. Words such as "we all belong" stand out prominently along another wall, and sharing family photos and teachers and children together in interesting nooks and crannies of the school. Yet another wall carries pictures of all of those who work inside of the school, nearly 34 educators and many student employees in this school of 200 families. Situated in our foyer, the entry were met with a strong orientation that forges a pathway to 12 classrooms. many atelier spaces, a piazza, the chef's kitchen, the theater, the main library, and all of the busyness of everydayness that's happening in the school. It spills over out into the hallways and back into the classrooms, and then outdoors into the play area, and then across the street and onto the campus. The old historic building made of brick and mortar was built for children in 1928, built for children, by an architect who said, "I want this built for children." That's our history, that's our story. The old and the new of the space hits our senses and offers stories into the many lives lived inside of this space. The infant and toddler wing, with classrooms named the moon, the sun, the star room, appears with its inhabitants. In this particular research project, it's 14 children and their families who are predominantly at Portland State University students, faculty, and staff. With teachers open to possibilities, the STAR classroom is designed with large windows that give natural light, small atelier spaces within the classroom to create the atelier way, and an aesthetic home-like quality that permeates the place. This is where our study begins, and it's forecasted by collaborations and excitement within the entire STAR classroom community. So the families are aware we're doing this, the children are aware we're doing this, the other teachers, the practicum students, people who are coming and going, the director. And here we are, year one, exploring. The children carved the first path. They want to know more and more, especially about the images taken by the small device in the teacher's hand. The teacher uses this device every day, throughout the day, to document children's learning and capture what they believe are important clips of time, worthy of digital permanence. The flash, the click, and the notice of a clip of time captured situates the study. Then we listen. We hear the children's voices say, "Let me see me," asking to view the image on the digital screen of the camera used by the primary documenter at that time, who was the teacher. The first day we introduce old cameras to the classroom. We notice an extraordinary moment in our everyday. We talked about that yesterday. Gus and Nora, those are pseudonyms, face each other, and Gus moves one of the cameras up to his face. He holds his hand out as if to stop the room from moving. He clicks. In the moment, we realize the children need the opportunity to become familiar with the digital camera, the real device, quickly made accessible to eager hands. First, we observe the children's exploration with the digital camera, and in an open-ended way, we note that the children examine the functions of the camera, such as turning the camera on and off and on and off and on and off. Then they spend an inordinate amount of time looking into the digital camera screen. As they walk around the classroom, occasionally telling nearby teachers and classmates what is there on the screen. We hear children saying, "Geez, look at me," as the photos are taken. This sort of exploring and playful photo taking, looking, and interacting continues throughout the first year, and then deepening. We see this deepening the children's language of camera and photography. Further, we add layers of their initial thinking. We create daily photograph journals that you can see in this photograph here. And we place them around the room so children can see themselves and their learning experiences reflected. We set up old computers and monitors in the corners of the rooms where the children can trace and watch familiar visual records they've captured. We purposefully and intentionally think of alternative light sources, including light brights, overhead projectors, light drums, and place opaque color materials to examine and create fresh perspectives of former and sometimes seen as long time ago events, clips in time. Our intentions around making transparencies are to create a sense of where the outdoor meets the inside. The metaphor reaches then into our internal landscapes of seeing as well, as in seeing inside of our mind's eye. Who do we become internally and what is our learning as we seek to see bits of ourselves in the outside world and to find the outside world within us as well. Natural light, transparencies, printing become an intensified study of looking and wondering and examining closely with the 1 to 2 year olds. As the children notice and investigate photographs of themselves and each other. We ask everyone to consider if there's self-recognition and where we find ourselves and each other in places and clips of time. In what type of internal conversations are the children engaging? These are questions we had. We weren't sure. We didn't know. We kept listening. We expand and use light with transparent photographs by placing a light projector in the classroom. We dare ask to the community, how will the children interact with the projected transparent photographs as compared to non-transparent daily journal photographs? We begin to see new sense of identity developing in the children's sense of themselves, their stature, their posture toward the digital camera, toward taking photographs of themselves and each other, and a recognition of one another. We invited children to continue their conversations with the photographs using larger images of themselves. And we engaged in this work in collecting photographs on walls in the classrooms, in the mini studios. At this point, we really started to wonder what type of relationship is being formed between the photograph and the children, especially when they could stand inside of the photograph. Were they really standing inside of the photograph? They could see what was projected on them, on their clothing, on their faces. With the light projector and more transparent photos, we flash images along the wall. Notice that we did not have a perfect placement. Like in this image. We didn't have a perfect placement. We just went ahead and did it. We would move things around as we could. The children didn't mind the aesthetic. These were new adventures for us in space, and our spaces were transforming rapidly. We weren't sure how to keep up with the aesthetic. So at the end of the first year, in the study of the power of photographs, we decided to pause. We look back with the children. We look at all the photos. We lay them out all over the floor. We look around and see what we've got. These are a couple of sample or representational photos taken by the 1 to 2 year olds. That's the ceiling. Anybody want to venture to guess what that is? It's definitely outdoor. I love that. Imagine you have a digital camera and you're one and you're holding the digital camera and you're taking a picture. With your finger in the way. An interesting idea. That's the house, the side of the house that they played in outdoors, but that's the child's finger. So. Next, our Power of Photograph study travels into a second year. And before we go there, I want to stop now and turn back to your photo. So I'd like for you actually, and I know some of you got up, so you're going to do this again, and we're going to do it at a little quicker time, quicker pace. I want you to take a second photo of the same whatever you were looking at. And then sit back down and I have more instructions for you if you have to get up. But take a second photo.
That's nice.
Really? Yeah.
Want to see?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you can actually see it. I kept thinking it would just be light, you know.
I'm being too slow.
Okay. Find your way back to your seats. Now here's what I'd like for you to do. Look at your first picture and look at your second picture. What do you see is different? What do you notice that's different this time? What's different? And you can write that down or you can tell your neighbors. What do you see that's different?
Watch mine.
Yeah,
I ate it.
You ate it.
That's mine too.
So,
Good story.
for the teachers and I, we thought, teachers and me, we thought about noticing. So we would ask the children to stop and notice. So you took a picture of this. You want to take a picture of this again. So we would ask them to notice. What changed? What's different? What's the same? And these were conversations that would go on then as we moved into year 2. And you'll see then how the shift begins. So I'll tell you, there's a little more reading. I'm almost done with all the reading. The children begin the second year, 1 year older and wiser. They've just been gone from school for a week during in-service, or 2 weeks during in-service. The children begin the school, it seems, though, this year, with the knowledge of expression only a click away. So they want those digital cameras in their hands immediately, day 1. The expression relates directly to the 100 languages of children. In Malaguzzi's theory of the 100 is there, children can use expressive languages to build competencies and understand the world with a bit more complex questioning. Using one medium to study a subject allows us to consider the subject through the medium's lens. When we add a new medium to express our understanding of that subject, we deepen our meaning of the subject we are studying. For example, if we study, I'll give you an example that doesn't relate to digital cameras necessarily. So if we study the butterfly in its natural habitat and then draw the butterfly, we only understand our butterfly experience through the affordance of drawing. It's an affordance that we use to understand butterfly. But if we express butterfly through, let's say, working in reused materials to create a butterfly, we may have to encounter the idea of color. That could be very different from drawing if you're using a black fine-tip felt marker, or if you're using a pencil. This language of reused material, or the language of color, which is a different idea, through the language of reused material, shifts how we study butterfly. Then if we study the butterfly through paint, we can express our language of butterfly color even more, depends on the kind of paint we're using. Then we can study through the language of clay, and this affords us the opportunity to move from 2-dimension to 3-dimension. So now you can start to think about, how does the butterfly move? What does it do in its world? So questions of wing thickness, the span, the body as different weight from the wings, from the antennae, come up. Then this goes on and out into narration, studying using narration, storytelling, bookmaking, all of these languages that relate to the language of butterfly, understanding the butterfly, offers new perspectives and complexities and richness to continue a journey into understanding and theorizing butterfly life and meaning. I have to give this, I don't know, I thought that was probably an easy way to kind of get into the 100 languages. So, although the children have grown and they find themselves in a new classroom called the Turtle Room, so now they're with the turtle and the seahorse and the starfish age group, and that's a whole wing of the school has now moved to a new wing with new classrooms with their teachers. So they've gone from the youngest toddlers to the oldest toddlers, youngest preschool. The familiar culture of school greets them at the beginning of their second year of the study. Many documents along the wall recall and reminisce the learning made visible. So in our school, we take the documents with us and we put them up as children are entering at the end of their in-service break. Children come back and they see the learning still on the walls. Sometimes teachers will say, I'm going to leave the learning in their former classroom so new children entering the school can see what was going on. And sometimes those documents will move and become a part of the new classroom on the walls and in the bookshelves, because we make a lot of books with our documents as well. So let's see, where am I? The clicks from the camera and the early photos are displayed to remind the children of their work from the prior year. Just as year 2 of the study begins, we're given an opportunity to witness and learn with one of the children enmeshed in this project, as if time had not even passed between this 2-week period. Nora quickly reminds us about the intention of the digital camera in her life. She's making her own creation at one of the classroom tables. She looks over and says, "I'm making a vanilla rainbow chip cake." We ask to take a photograph before she leaves the table. Delightfully, Nora brings the digital camera over herself. She doesn't even look at us, and she takes her own photograph of the creation. We're well out beyond the idea that we need to interact with the digital cameras with the children. Nora paves a pathway to more thoughtful photo taking in the classroom, and we find that this work connects to another familiar place. We take daily walks every day. We go out to the park blocks at the PSU campus, and we go to the stage area with the children to foster connections and relationships. Oh, that's happening. That's interesting, Jean. With cameras in hand, the familiar intentional language of photography, we watch in excitement and anticipation as the movements of the cameras in the children's hands point towards the ground, the sky, the trees. As the children look at the digital screen, we ponder what new relationships and perspectives are being established. We take back the images, thoughts, and ideas and documents to the parents and co-teachers, and you can see to the children. They're engaged in it already on the computer. And we raise a question: how rich would the story become if children are invited to represent their digital images the photo they've taken, using another means of representation, offering them an opportunity to think along the lines of the 100 languages of children. We're already thinking about the difference between creative expression and representational thinking. We sort of took those ideas apart. Representational thinking offers a really different sort of way into medium than creative, expressive arts might. So, and when you take both of those ideas and add them together with children's work, you'll go far. They'll go far. So this sparks our next steps in the studies. This dialogue is between the parents and the teachers in an evening session where the parents start demanding that the 100 languages of children unfold in the classroom. We begin to notice that children have opportunities to explore and think in multiple dimensions, new dimensions. This thinking moves us out from the photo and reading a photo, kind of like what I've asked you to do, read the photo, okay, to what the photo says to us and them. That's different than reading the photo. The work compels us to take more perspective. In other words, the photo is seen as more than a photo. It becomes a glimpse into our lives and out towards the meaning of life. Now you start to see where we get philosophical and we wax into the philosophy. So in the next encounters, the children begin to share a narrative about their photographs. The narrative comes alive through sketching, color enhancement, as well as with their voice and the narration. And here we go. In the second year, the children have an opportunity to explore in these dimensions and think about what the photo says to us and then what the photo is saying to the world. This work pulls us more into the perspective of photo taking and photo sharing into our lives, the perspectives of our own lives. What do we remember from the past? What do we think about the future and where we're going? So these following photographs were taken by the children of the familiar and one of their favorite places at PSU, the stage area. As a side note, we had been utilizing some very old and tattered and taped up digital cameras, and I won't get into all of that, but a parent actually gave us the Fisher-Price cameras, which could allow for more bangs and drops and spills as children were still learning to use the teachers' digital cameras, and the teachers were moving to more of the large lens cameras and things like that. So having children work with those cameras was a part of our work with them. At the same time, we wanted them to have readily accessible, easily accessible cameras that they weren't dropping and breaking that ended up costing us a bunch of money to replace. So we had simultaneously, we were working from the space of the nice photo. Well, it's not like that kind of camera, of course, because this is a different era. But the nice cameras, and then the cameras that were more child friendly. So as we worked with those, here are some photographs that they took, and here are things they said. Here, Luca, age 3, explains a pine cone, a tree, and a rock. I take this picture because one time I saw a rock at my own house. In this instance, Seth, age 3, shares, I like trees that are in the forest more than I like trees that are in the park. And he takes a picture of the tree in the park. As the teachers and parents and children pause and look at this work, an important question is raised. How rich would the story become if children represent using these other means? So we start to move in that direction, and here's what we do. Children are invited to enrich their digital image story by first using black fine tip pens and paper in ink-line drawings. Children show us the way. Isabel, age 3, asks us for something more than ink-line drawing on the paper. She wishes to represent the color as well. There's color on the photograph too, she tells us. I need that color. The importance of color is initiated by the children during the digital photograph sketching process. The children enrich their stories not only by the use of color, but then by their voice and narrating what's happening and what they see in the photos that they might not have seen before in the photos. Isabel shares, I need blue on my sketch because these beads are blue. In an attempt to illustrate children's journey into the 100 language of children, I'm just going to speed ahead and share with you Lauren's representational thinking and creative expression of his reflection back about his learning. This is Lauren's story. Here's the pushing button, and here's the camera coming out of the button. A hand came out of the camera, a nose, another nose. I got a great idea. I want to put a lion on Lila's polka dotted dress. That's the dot to dot, trees. There's a tall one. Here comes squiggly branches. Oh no, it's going to break. Here comes the branch. Here's the branch. There's a branch. They're really into the branches. There's branches now on the trees, now on the ground. In Lauren's story, we think that he's both working from a real photograph and then moving beyond the photograph to what is actually captured out beyond the image itself in the child's mind, in Lauren's mind. He creates fantasy, such as adding a lion to Lila's polka dotted dress. To more fully understand children's relationship to fantasy and its threads back to reality, we turn to Filipini's words as she reminds us, you keep inside yourself all of what fantasy means. You have to think how much distance there is between imagination that is fantasizing and one creating realistic images, not fantastic and new images. This notion of keeping inside the fantasy helps us understand Lauren is bringing his schema to life and relating with this photo, his experience, and his fantastical thinking. So in the next example, Nora seeks to recreate the image of her friend's movement at the outdoor stage area. This is Nora's story. First, he has flip-flops on, so I drew a lion. Again with the lion. Now I need to make, there must have been a lion movie out of time. Now I need to make his shorts and his face, legs, and flip-flops. The stage, that's me taking a picture, but I need to draw a camera in there too. Nora can leap between what she describes as flip-flops, legs, and face. We wonder where her idea of face comes from, as her classmate's face is not even in the original photo. This leads us to think about her impulse to represent faces in her creative languages. Further, Nora seems to have the desire to represent herself in the work, even when she's not present in the original digital image. She is present taking the picture. She wishes to draw herself and the camera not represented in the image, as if to say, I was there too, taking this picture. We keep revisiting Nora's photo series many times and asking ourselves this question: why is recreating the story with herself as the camera holder and her classmates' face and body facing her an important part of Nora's journey into making thinking visible? The original photo may not be the image Nora is carrying around in her mind, but may contain trails and traces of her experience around the time the image was captured. So the trails and traces around the time the image was captured is now being told as part of the story of the image. We know that memory plays a strong role in children's storytelling, noting this effect time and again as the children look back and make sense of their moments of photography. Rinaldi writes that from a very young age, children seek to produce interpretive theories, to give answers. Some may say these theories are ingenuous and naive, but this is of little importance to us in Reggio Emilia. The important thing is not only to give value, but above all, to understand what lies behind the questions and the theories. What lies behind them is something truly extraordinary. Rinaldi's sentiments ring true, and we stop and pay attention to Lauren, who wishes to make a lion on Lila's polka dotted dress, and to Nora, who's not in the picture itself, but makes herself so in the drawing, and in her story because she's taking the photo with the digital camera. After all, Nora is there in the experience. So we're paying particular attention to Lauren and Nora's separate ideas of drawing, their respective lions, why this may be a part of the stories. At the end of the day, the lions may represent a ferociousness, a continued struggle to express oneself. We just simply do not know, as these ideas are only revealing themselves to us literally a couple months ago. While our interpretation may require a whole other story in the making, we're left to ponder the power of the extraordinary in Lauren and Nora and our everyday lives, using photography as a means. We know the extraordinary exists in the everyday moments. I talked about that yesterday, so I won't get back into that today. Throughout our study of the power of photographs, overall themes emerged around interactions, fantasy, memory, relationships, children's interactions with the digital camera, the school community interactions, their peers, the adults, the materials becomes apparent as the study progresses outward and outward with many, many more pictures. We end up not printing most of them because why waste the digital ink when we could actually start to show them on laptops and other things that became more available to us. Keefe and Caseberg contend that knowledge is constructed by children through a dynamic, interactive process. This process makes us think about how the children ask us to help them attend to their verbal narrations, their recordings, the layers of color in their black ink line representations, the narrations, the photography itself, the memory of the photograph, the remembering of the photograph. And we realize the power in our responsibility. We're now responsible. We have to be responsive to we have to be responsive educators who wish to see children's theories develop, who wish to see children's theories grow and shift through various languages and uses of language. Rinaldi asks us to be a school where theories are born, where they're held. What does it mean to be a school where we build theories? It changes what the school does. We respond with solidarity with this idea, and the joyous and meaningful weight of the word bears down on us. So, at the end of the day, Malaguzzi states, children have the right to be the source and constructor of their own experiences. Through relationships and interactions with their peers and the adults, with ideas and with objects, we absolutely find the right for children as they engage with digital cameras and photography. We could have been teachers who never let them touch the cameras. The 100 languages, both expressively and representationally, show us the pathway into their thinking. They're playing between fantasy, reality, remembering things, the real images and clips in time, and the more complex set of full life experiences encapsulate all of our stories retold. And we can't thank you enough for letting us express them in this room today. So I'm going to end with that, and I want you to take one more picture of your of whatever it was you were photographing. But this time I actually want you to purposefully choose a different angle and look in on that differently. And then you're going to talk with your neighbors. So do that. I'll say stop when I'm ready, and I'll give you more instructions. Okay, so that video prompted a third-year study with the same group that I would not have time to share with you all. But the third-year study was actually the 3 to 4-year-olds, this group, moving upstairs into their new classroom and beginning to study stop animation. I was like, I don't even know what do you do with stop animation. So they created a digital studio space to work in stop animation, and there's a whole story across the entire year about superheroes and who superheroes are in their lives and what they represent, and then how they were made in stop animation. So, and then books were made of that. So it's crazy town with the digital photography that turns into videography. So anyway, that is it. Thank you very much.